I was talking to a guy, you know, what do you do? I help women understand men. And he had the deer in the headlights thing, and he said, what are you going to tell him? And I started sharing some of this stuff, and I saw his shoulders just kind of slump. And he looked, you know, you see somebody, they just look a little defeated. I felt bad for this guy. And as his shoulders kind of slumped, and he said a phrase that I had heard so many times from Jeff, and we as women we have heard this phrase from our men so many times, and we have no idea what they're talking about. But he said this phrase, which was, you know, I love my wife, but nothing I do is ever good enough for her. Now, if that's ringing any bells, yeah, feel the love, sister. We've all heard that, right? Okay, we've all heard it and not had any idea what it meant. Now, I had talked to enough men and done enough of this research that I thought I knew what this guy meant by that. But I said, can you give me an example? And he said, I'll just tell you something that happened last night. He said, you know, we had friends over for dinner, the kitchen was a wreck, and she had to run out for a meeting, and she said, hey, you know, while I'm gone, would you mind cleaning up the kitchen so that when I get home, we can just go right to bed and we don't have to clean? And he said, sure, no problem. And so he cleaned the kitchen, and he said, she comes home, and she gives me a kiss on the cheek and looks over my shoulder into the kitchen and goes, and she grabs a sponge and she starts re-cleaning all the countertops. And he said, nothing I do is ever good enough for her. Now, every woman in here is like, get over it. You know, like, every woman here is like, you are so oversensitive. Like, we've been in situations like this, and we're thinking, why are you getting upset? Why should that bother you? That shouldn't bother you. And I heard this stuff over and over and over. And I finally got it in my mind because, again, not a psychologist, not a pastor, just, you know, I was an analyst on Wall Street. That was my background. Jeff's an attorney. And so we hadn't studied this stuff in, like, school or anything. And so I kept having this, that shouldn't bother you feeling. And then suddenly something hit me in my heart, and I realized I'm saying that because it wouldn't bother me. He's not me. He's wired very differently by a God who knew what he was doing. And once I started realizing that, and I started seeing these hurts and these needs as legitimate, rather than you shouldn't need that, or it shouldn't feel that way, everything started to change in our marriage.